Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Nikki Starchild Show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight we have a huge guest. This is a huge guest who's bringing information to the public about his experience. People have referred to him as Patient 18 to the Patient 17 movie. If anybody's seen the film Patient 17, which I think I've got it correct. Yes, Patient 17. If anybody's seen the film Patient 17, it's about Roger Leir, Dr. Roger Leir, and his work on the implants and him taking out an implant. And the film has always kept things open for me in regards to this topic. So we have Eric Mitchell here. Eric Mitchell, he's a father of 4 from Hot Springs, Arkansas, and he has become a lifeline for experiencers experiencing extraterrestrial phenomenon. He's often referred to as experiencers. His involvement began after his own encounters with the U, reducing the stigma around these phenomenon and fostering a more supportive environment for experiencers. So with that, I bring in Eric Mitchell. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Nikki, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you. Chat GPT kind of, threw out some foul balls there, but it will do that.
We try. What did they do? What did they get wrong? I know this is why we don't trust Chat GPT. For those of you who don't know, oh yeah, did they get something wrong in the intro? Because I know I was throwing some stuff out there.
I know Sheehan from Maureen Seberg. She works at Nexus magazine. That's where the article came from. But I don't know Diana Pasolka. Probably gonna meet her one of these days, I'm sure.
Author underscores. Yeah. You'll definitely probably meet her, especially after the things that we were talking about. So because there's just some information that you definitely, that helped me find you in a lot of ways. I'm going to change my lighting real quick because this, like we were talking about before, this is something I've been trying to follow through on for about 2 years. I really do think there's something to the implant phenomenon. I do think that there's something huge going on associated with it, especially when I talk to people like you and we look at the lab results of these implants. People pretend like there is not physical evidence from these extraterrestrial encounters, but in fact there is. It's just that this stigma is really holding people back. So to start with, I just wanted to ask you, how are you doing today for once? How are you doing?
Another day in paradise. I'm glad to be home. I spent the better part of 11 years on the road, flying, driving, and stuff like that. I never, for 34 years of my life, I didn't believe in UFOs. I was brought up, those are the crazy people. So you can imagine my surprise waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and having one of these craft hovering, off the ground in front of me. It was the case was opened by Barry Gaunt, Kentucky MUFON director at the time, 2013. And this thing kept coming back. It affected my body physically, mostly my eyes. I had 20/20 vision. These electromagnetic fields will push and pull on your eyes at the same time. So luckily I can get reading glasses and see far away and up close at the same time. So that was kind of a blessing, but it's been a long ride. These things have been out in the open. I've moved 9 different states now where it's been out in the open. I think Las Vegas was the most prominent because there were people all over Las Vegas filming, the activity over my home. So you really can't move away from this kind of thing. But back in 2013, I was introduced to Dr. Roger Leir. We spent a lot of time on the phone talking about implants and surgeries and all that. And we were supposed to meet at Dolores Cannon's conference in northern Arkansas. That's about 3 hours north of where I am now. and we're going to meet, discuss surgery, and he passed away 2 weeks before that meeting. But I did meet with his assistant, Stephen Colburn, and he has a whole box of different meters and all sorts of things to definitively detect uh, whether someone has one or not. Um, I did pinpoint a spot on my knee where I believed something got put in there. And Dr. Roger Leir actually sent me a 100-pound neodymium magnet, and he postulated. He wasn't sure, but he was a very brilliant and creative man. So he basically sent me a very dangerous magnet to just 10 minutes a night, hold it there. He said they're non-magnetic metals, but it may create an eddy effect, an electromagnetic bubble around the object where it'll eventually come closer to the skin. And it actually worked. The object is just beneath the skin now. But they were interested in the one in the back of my neck. And so unfortunately, the surgery never happened. As far as I know, there's no surgeons out there that are willing to do this kind of work. And, I don't blame them. It's frustrating for me because I get calls all the time of people. And just to correct Chat GBT again, it's 127 different countries, over 3,000, worked with experiencer, and tens of thousands of phone calls with people that are just freaking out. Some people need it extensively. I did. I needed it extensively. I didn't believe in the subject, and all of a sudden, it's all over my life. So yeah, these things are very real. Commonly 50, 52 different metals, most of which are not even known in our solar system, according to the database where we catalog meteorites that have landed for thousands of years all over planet Earth. So they're also atomically aligned, as if you were to take one atom at a time and graft a piece of several types of different metals together atomically. Normally, they have a thing Roger Leir talked about was microtubules, which that would make you think the brain, because the brain has microtubules. We're not sure exactly what they're doing, but it's got to be fantastic. But these things, it's almost like you have a drill the size of an atom going through these metals in a very peculiar way.
I've heard a lot about microtubules quite a bit in this community in regards to implants, and so much of the things that you're saying are going to resonate not only with people like me who research it, but people out there who are listening to this right now. So to kind of give people who are just getting to know you a little bit and just first hearing out your story, um when do you think you started having these experiences? And when did this all start to
Um,
happen? When did you first start finding out yourself that you had these experiences or remembering that you had these experiences?
there's some people in my life that suggested there was weird things around me when I was a kid. But I grew up under skeptical parents and family members, so I just never believed in the strange. If something strange happened, I just explain it away. Just like most people do. We find ways in our mind to make it right. And it's part of the stigma, and we tend not to want to believe. We want to believe that human beings somehow technologically in the past 100 years or so have figured out the reality of existence. I mean, for 300,000 years before that, we had rocks and sticks and cool fires and stuff. But really, in the past 100 years or so, we've got into technology and trying to understand the world around us a little bit better. But for me, it was uh, July 27th, the night of July 27th, 2013. I went outside to escape the kids. When you're a single parent, it's you hide in the bathroom or you hide in your car. Those are my two favorites. So I ended up laying on the hood of my car and had a smoke. Next thing I know, I closed my eyes for a minute. I was looking at the stars, and I don't really know how to explain it, but it looked like a Einstein's Rosen bridge behind my eyes, and I literally felt as if I shot away. I can see this tunnel with my eyes closed, which I've never seen anything with my eyes closed unless, it's some sort of a dream. It was scary, and by the time I could feel my body, I jumped off the hood of the car and I literally ran inside. Um,
That
I
that
think it
does
was
sound
four
incredibly.
o'clock.
It was
Yeah,
4
yeah,
PM or 4
it
AM?
still happened. It was about 9:30 at night. It was about 4 o'clock the next morning. I woke up and I was standing outside of my apartment. I had no idea how I got there. I assumed sleepwalking, but my right shoulder was facing or my left shoulder was facing my door. My right shoulder was facing the dead end street, and that's my cat loves to photobomb and stuff like that. That's my cat, but um, so I see this orange glow at the corner of my eye, which was strange. So I turned to look, and this thing was, I don't know, 50, 60 feet off the ground, 40 feet in diameter, orange red sphere that kind of rippled like the sun. It was very bright, but it didn't light up the street. It's if like you turn off your light bulb and the whole room goes dark, but you see the light bulb still on. It doesn't make any sense. Light travels, but this was self-contained. I spent maybe 20 minutes with my eyebrows just squeezed together, trying to figure out what it was I was looking at. I mean, this thing was, it didn't bob, it didn't weave, it was stationary, and it just didn't make sense what I was looking at. But I went inside, I made coffee, and silly thought, but I turned on the news to see if there was any strange weather phenomenon going on outside. I mean, I didn't. I mean, to me, a flying saucer back then, or a UFO, was a flying saucer on a fishing string in a 1940s, 50s movie. Just with strange stuff in the background. But so I definitely didn't think UFO at the time. But by the time the sun came up, I left the door open so I can keep peeking and looking at it. But by the time the sun came up, it was just gone. I didn't even see it leave. 9:30 that night after homework and Pixar movies with the kids, I went outside for a smoke. I was pacing my one-story apartment, and I was looking in that one spot, thinking, "Wow, that must have been ball lightning," and I missed it. I didn't even get a picture. I could have woke up the kids, and all these thoughts are going through my mind, and then all of a sudden, it just kind of appeared, turned on very slowly. So if you turn on a light bulb, it's immediate. But this object went slowly all the way up to 40 feet in diameter, and then all the way back down to maybe softball size. And then it started moving very slowly, going on and going off. And it was about 2 to 3 miles an hour, and it was making a horseshoe shape around my person. It felt like a red wasp that was kind of angry and it was going to circle you. Kind of, you could tell it was intelligent. And back then I couldn't really describe what that notoriety was. I my legs stiffened up like a scared goat because I'm realizing this thing is intelligently controlled, no sound, no wings, no means of propulsion whatsoever, absolutely silent, and it's stalking me. It's making a circle. Your primitive mind kind of comes on, like, what the hell is this? So my knees locked up in fear, and I kind of turned my body as it went around me, and it ended up just above my one-story apartment, about 12 to 15 feet from my forehead, and that's when I just stood there in awe. I didn't know I couldn't move, and it wasn't like some strange technology kept me from moving. My fight or flight locked my knees where I couldn't move. And this thing flashed twice, very fast, and shot off to my right like a bullet. And the only thought I had in my head was the air displacement or the shock wave is going to tear my body apart. And it didn't. I didn't feel anything. And so I literally duck walked into my apartment. because my knees were locked up so bad. But I went inside, I grabbed my daughter's computer, and I spent most of the night trying to find out what it was on the computer. And all I came across was conspiracy theories, Area 51. I wasn't going to listen to any of that crap. My headspace back then when it came to this stuff is, conspiracy theorists, the crazy people. I wanted to know what it actually was, and not some sort of alien theory, but it turned out that's exactly what it is. I hate to say the word alien. NHI is probably more appropriate, um, because we're not certain exactly what's going on.
So, do you think these beings have the ability to make us not remember anything? Do you think they have that ability to just make us forget all the memories that we may have associated interacting with them?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's various ways to do something like that. I mean, you can literally use light to put someone under hypnosis. That's a common knowledge. Could be other types of technologies. Gosh, missing time is a normal thing. Um, I've had it several times, and and seemingly there's accidents involved. Where me and my neighbor Christy were outside having a smoke. Didn't see any craft or anything. I felt that feeling though, and I was getting closer to trying to learn how to describe that feeling, that connection. But we both blinked, and we were behind my apartment, about 30 yards all the way back. And by the time my blink finished, I realized I was in a completely different place. Christy actually left. She gave me a left hook. That was her reaction to missing time and displacement. That's how she reacted. She gave me a left hook and took off running. And I can remember just seeing her white feet in the dark, realizing that she had shoes on a second ago, and now she's barefoot. And she took off running away from me, because it scared her so much. And her and I had missing time together 3 times, and she was just a friend from down the street. She worked nights, so she was one of the last people in the neighborhood to actually see this thing because she was always gone in the evening hours. But finally, she had a day off. She wanted to celebrate with shots that her and her husband had agreed to a divorce. Um, it wasn't a healthy relationship, so she came around the corner to celebrate with the neighbors. Hey, I'm finally getting rid of this jerk, and which was great for her. And at the time was the first time my kids actually saw this thing too. We were bellied up to my Cadillac, and the tree line was probably 30, 40 yards away. And this thing was just above the tree line, and it was stationary. She comes around the corner with Bacardi and shot glasses, being really loud. Me and my buddy Dan and my kids, we're quiet as a mouse just looking at this thing because you get that feeling like, you're walking through the woods and you realize you're too close to a bear. You're very quiet. You don't breathe loud. You're just in that moment. Don't move too fast. Something bad can happen. Type of feeling. Here, her clumsy butt comes around the corner really loud, and we're like, shh, be quiet. But she said, "Holy bleep, that thing is real." She heard everybody talking about it. Um, but about that time, we had a Black Hawk helicopter. Didn't hear it coming. Came up over the power lines and dipped down behind us. We turned. The object took off as soon as the helicopter showed up. We turned around, and this guy spotlights us. I mean, I'm holding onto my hat. I'm blind, from the light. I can see these big goggles on his face, through the glass. And then he went up and down the street, the grass across the street, looked around and raised up and went back the same way he came. And we have a small privately owned airport here, and there were two Blackhawks there for a long time. They were just parked there. Why would an airport need that? I mean, come on. But the activity was going on quite a bit. My neighbor, there's no way to explain it all, but this thing did knock me down with a pencil beam type of light, and it somehow forced my brain into savant syndrome. And so going from, my first IQ test, which was 110, my last IQ test was 150. So that was really impressive to my investigator, where I went from a deep Southern um, draw, speaking very slow. My vocabulary was extremely limited to uh, a really fast boost. As a matter of fact, I remember calling him on the phone, and my brain was going so fast that I just wanted to report some things to him. And I just started going off as soon as he answered the phone. This happened and that happened. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And he said, wait a minute, who is this? I was like, it's me, Eric. He goes, you're not Eric. Is this a prank call? And I'm saying, no, Bear, it's me, Eric. He's like, where's your accent? Why are you talking so fast? What's going on? So it blindsided him. I mean, he's been doing this for 50 years, and he always sees a consciousness shift, worldview destruction and rebuild, but he's never seen someone just escalate so fast. So he literally didn't believe it was me until my kids came around and said, "Yeah, that's our dad." So that was a really
Yeah.
difficult part for me to kind of. So I had my daughter send off some emails to a professor at Stanford University back in 2013, because I saw him on the movie Sirius with Stephen Greer, and I thought, man, this guy's got 6 PhDs. He's interested in this kind of subject. Maybe he can tell me what's going on with my brain. But I sent him several emails, but I didn't even know how to email back then, so it was like through my daughter's phone. But little did I know at the time, he had the CIA coming into his office with pilots that were experiencing the opposite of what I was going through. And a few years later, I had a man from Harvard contact me, and now they're kind of working on the savant syndrome side instead of Havana syndrome, where it's damaged and you have scar tissue. Now you can see that it's augmented, and this fibrous tissue is not scarring. It's a large network grouped together in a small place of neural connect to to ability. I'm kind of choked on that, but it's a huge fibrous part of the brain, basal ganglia, cauda putamen, cauda nucleus. It's just unbelievable amount of uh, neural activity, whereas not many people have that in within their motor function. So it changes a lot of things about you.
So you're talking about Dr. Gary Nolan is the scientist that you tried to reach out after seeing the documentary Sirius with Dr. Stephen Greer, which was about Out of the Skeleton.
Hmm.
Is that who you're referencing? You were reaching out to Dr. Gary Nolan?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's I checked into all the work he's done in his life, and I was blown away. I mean, have you looked at this guy's credentials? Did he have time to pee? I mean, 6 PhDs, patents through the roof. He's got companies all over the place. And I guess he's gone a little bit public on some of the findings he's had. Probably not as much as he wants to, but he's got to be responsible with that, kind of information. But I sent one of the guys, a neurologist from Harvard that I'd been coursing with, and I sent him the email. I said, get a hold of Dr. Gary Nolan. He's great. So my friend, and I drop names when I can, but these scientists, they don't need to be in the public. They need to be doing their job, and right now he is mapping out um, the experiencer brain. He's with an AI system. So you've got 100 billion neurons within your motor function. That's the totality of an entire brain. And so he's having to use AI to map, all these neural connections within this area. And it's fascinating. The first step that you kind of learn, and let me put it in a like a non woo woo type of way. Okay, so there's family bloodlines that have a specific gene, and it lays dormant. Sometimes when we're children, we undergo unnecessary trauma. Dad's drunk all the time, comes home, half the time he pulls off the belt and beats me. So my motor function in its growth period is going to be hyper vigilant of this problem. Is dad going to come home drunk today? And so we develop a better sense of empathy. That's step one. You know, as these neural connections are growing and becoming more fibrous, it you learn to feel other people's feelings. You know, I know that sounds woo woo, but we are mammals, we are animals, and we adapt to our surroundings. So we've got this special gene that runs in families. One member wakes up through this trauma, and this is not every case, but the common case. And we keep an eye on this traumatic thing to stay safety. So the second step is going to be intuitive ability. I feel like dad's going to be home in 10 minutes. I feel like he's angry already. I better take out the trash so he has no excuse to be angry with me. So there's that intuitive function. Uh, the third step that I've noted now, me as someone that works and counselors with experiencers, a lot of experiencers don't want to go to a psychiatrist or a therapist because they already halfway think they're crazy, you know. And these are that's a sane process to question your sanity. People that don't question their sanity, that's the people you got to worry about. So we all live with this cognitive dissonance all the time where our brain fights you're crazy or yes this is happening, and it's a constant struggle. But you know, the third step is synchronicity, and basically you're seeing 111, 222, 1111, you know, and every time you look up at a license plate or a clock, it's like, what is going on? Am I just insane, or is there something to this? And there is. You begin to start to see coincidences happen all the time, and nobody is noticing these coincidences that are happening. And it's like, why can't people notice this, you know? And the final step would be non-locality, remote viewing, out of body experiences, all sorts of things of that nature, and that encompasses, you know, the whole thing. So that's what you would really refer to as the quintessential experiencer brain. So I don't work with Dr. Gary Nolan, but I do work with you know, people at Harvard because of the amount of people I've worked with worldwide. And that's really important to say because there's people in Uganda, the Philippines, different cultures, different foods. Some have televisions, some have never even seen a television, but we all have this commonality, you know, and that's thousands and thousands of people. I estimate, um, if I can be proven wrong, that would be great too. But I estimate probably 15% of the world's population. So that's a large amount of people under this social stigma where we're not allowed to talk about these things. But it's just amazing, you know, to see someone from Africa that lives in a grass hut, fishes and grows grain all day to fish more, get more grain, to be able to sell that for something like money because he doesn't normally need that in where he lives, and go into a town and find someone with technology to reach out about this thing that's coming down from the sky. And finally contact someone like myself. You know, so I don't know if you ever seen that show Quantum Leap when we were kids, but that's what it's like every time my phone rings. It's going to be a different story, a different country, a different point of view, but everything matches up. The internal quintessential experiencer. Before the experiencer was someone that witnessed something on the outside of them. Now we know the true quintessential experiencer is something that's going on inside of them. Like my buddy Mike always tells, you know, he gets on stage and talks about these things. He said, you know, guys, it's not about the lights in the sky anymore. It's about the lights in our hearts that we need to pay attention to because something is going on here.
So, in the documentary, Patient 17, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we talked about it earlier, but Dr. Roger Leir, who was investigating all of these alien implants in the middle of this being filmed, he had a heart attack and he passed. Is that correct? It appears that that's what happens during the course of the film. Was that correct? What, because during,
I'm not.
do you know?
I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I heard heart attack, and I also heard that the coroner report showed various types of metal in his bloodstream, which was kind of strange. But I don't know exactly how he died. At that time, I was kind of mortified. I was going to go to my first uh, UFO conference, and I heard he passed away 2 weeks before the conference happened. Um, and that part alone just shrouded me, because I was going to have not only my investigator and his team, talking to my kids, my neighbors, electromagnetic field, the gamma ray energy. I mean, just, my kids grew up in a MUFON investigation. I'd rather them play baseball and football and soccer and band and all this good stuff. But um, I was just kind of devastated from that direction because I knew nobody was going to believe me at all. So I needed that piece of real evidence to come out of my body. So I never knew exactly how he passed away. I hear so many different things over the years, but yeah, it was 2 weeks. And in my mind, naive mind, the first time I heard the word ufology, I thought maybe I can get an online class, and I certainly didn't know what the heck MUFON was. I was shocked. I was like, "There's actually people in every state that study UFOs at people's houses? What? Are you serious?" It was a long, slow integration for me to actually accept the fact that all of this is real. But yeah, it was like 2 weeks after the Dolores Cannon conference is when she died. So you can imagine my point of view of everybody's dying. I need to get the hell away from this stuff. Um, but I did get to talk to her for a couple hours at the conference, and she was the sweetest lady, full of wisdom. My gosh, I intentionally kept trying to keep her, but she was busy having to do, all the things that she needed to do at her conference.
Well, yeah, and that's a big question, because from what I watched when I was watching it this morning before we had this interview, because I watched it again, i- is Roger Leir died in the middle of the filming, and like you were saying, like people dying. Like it's a
Mhm.
dark topic. Like it is dark because of that. Like that's one of the things that's really shocking about the film is Roger Leir dies, and then the test results come out that it's inconclusive. Um, and so when did you notice your first implant? Like take us to that moment. What was that like? Were you felt it? I know you've touched on it briefly, and and that you have more than one, right? 3 or
Yes,
4, I
yes.
think is what we talked about.
It was Dr. Roger Lear's assistant, Dr. Stephen Colburn, and he usually keeps a electromagnetic field meter, gamma, all sorts of tricks in one, metallic suitcase, and he- he- he's the guy that can really test for it. He even uses stud finder, which if you can't detect anything and you still think there's something there, a stud finder is going to detect that that it's there, which I found fascinating because, I'll tell experiencers certain tricks I've learned over the years. You take a water bottle like this, screw the lid, squeeze it halfway, screw the lid back, and there's a barometer. So you put that by your window at night, and if the barometric pressure drops very quickly, which happens around these objects, you're going to hear that thing crinkle by itself, and you probably saved yourself about $500. But another good way to have those is if you have like a tornado, monsoon, something like that. It's going to crinkle in your window, and it'll probably wake you up to where you could be ready for some sort of dangerous storm as well. So I thought that stud finder trick was kind of a cool one. But for me, when I first realized it, it was about a week or two after he sent me that magnet. And I did. That thing was so dangerous. God, it's 100-pound neodymium. So if you put it on your fridge, it's going to take a 350-pound guy to pull that thing off. Something that belongs in the Looney Tunes. But after some time, I'd say a week, 2 weeks, I started to see a little metallic under my skin in my knee, and I thought, "Oh my God, this thing is real," And I, I, I was mortified. I couldn't believe it. I felt extremely violated, in so many different ways, and made me wonder because I never really had a clear memory of abduction. My children did, and still do. But I remember trying to open my eyes and knowing I wasn't at home in bed. And it's like the extent of it. But, waking up with a laser incision scar from nipple to navel with no explanation whatsoever, waking up with hundreds of holes only between the elbow and the shoulder cuff. And I'm talking about holes where you can fit a raindrop in each one of them. It happened to my daughter as well. It looks like a honeycomb and it's so dehydrated for some reason that they're not bleeding or pussing like they should. So it took, about a month before they would actually be hydrated enough to burst open and start running blood down our arms. Unfortunately, it was summertime, so we wore long sleeve shirts and kept a spare in the car just in case either one of us started bleeding again. But it took a long time. I still have the scars, of course, from shoulder cuff to elbow on both sides. And unfortunately, so did my daughter. Her pediatrician was extremely upset. I've golfed with this guy. I've known him for over a decade. And he said, Eric, what's happening with you guys? He's pediatrician for over 30 years. He's seen every bug bite. He's seen marbles stuck in a child's nose. He's seen everything a child can get themselves into. And he's never seen anything like that. I mean, he just kept asking, how did your arms only get dehydrated and the rest of your body is hydrated? He's like, he's trying to make sense of all this. And he told me, he said, Eric, I'm still shocked to this day, but I understand. He said, Eric, he pulled me to the side. He said, if I had known you, he said, I'd have to report you. And I said, what do you mean report me? You think I could do something like this to myself or my children? There's just no way. So these abduction scenarios, thankfully, I don't remember. I'd probably be more scarred emotionally and mentally from what my kids remember. But they just, I don't know. My daughter, she graduated at 15 years old. I adopted her. Brilliant young lady. Started college at 15, and she's the type of kid, how somebody breaks a lamp and every kid points to the next kid. He did it, she did it, he did it. She was never that type of kid. If she broke a lamp, I'd say, who broke the lamp? She'd say, I did. I was vacuuming and the cord hit it and it fell over. She's just that. So I've never seen her lie. I've seen her try to do it and she turns red and smiles like I do. But she just, she's an analytical, fact driven type of kid all the way up into adulthood now. So um, for her to sit down and say, Dad, we were on a craft last night. This is not the imagination of a child that's 15 years old going to college. This is an analytical child that wanted to relay fact, and that was hard for me to hear from my kids. So independently, I go talk to my son in his bedroom. I said, what happened last night? He said, Dad, I don't know if it was a dream or if it was real, but we were on a craft, and he said the same thing that she had said, and they hadn't corresponded yet, so it's very difficult to just accept that, you know, especially at that time. It was just, I couldn't register that.
What other details did they give you that you were able to get from your kids who remembered being on this ship? That's nice. I mean, that you have each other, that they have brother and
Hmm.
sister to like be together, because I've seen that a lot in families. It I guess one aspect of being grateful for, despite all the trauma and difficulty around this topic, is it's good that they had each other to remember too, and not feel like they're crazy, because they could just so what was that like for you as they
Yeah.
gave you more details about, like, because you're sitting here and your children are telling you that you were on a craft last night, and you're how do you process that? How does that work for you? What's that like?
I'm a Southern man. I slept on the couch so I can be the closest person to the front door. Um, as a father, as a man, there's no bigger struggle than knowing your children are in danger and there's nothing you can do about it. It'll destroy a man on the inside, especially a Southern man. I slept on the couch with a 380 under my pillow with a flashlight. That's where I was sleeping. Because if anything came through that door, I was going to shoot it, basically. That's physical harm to my children. I don't play that at all. Do what you want to me, but leave them alone. I mean, that was one of the most hardest and difficult things to deal with. But they lucked out from it. I was buying extra ice cream. I was getting their favorite cereal. I just felt so bad about what was going on. So they cashed in pretty well. But one thing I noticed that kids are not socially engineered yet. So they were accepting this and not going through the grueling time that I was having with it. They were kind of excited. They were curious. Oh my gosh, we're not alone in the universe. And here's me. I'm batting it away as much as possible. I'm trying to find another explanation. Do I have a brain tumor? Do I have schizophrenia? What's wrong with me? Let's get a diagnosis. At least I get one of those free checks and maybe some good medications. But turns out I'm fine. I think my last psychological exam was trouble adjusting to a trauma. That was literally the only thing put on paper after I was looked at. So, and it's actually a thing. I talked to some of my psychiatrist friends, and they said, "Yeah, it's actually something they can put you down for." And I was like, "Can I get a check for that?" And they said, "No, no, you have to be a lot worse than that." So, no check for
Well,
me. But when Dr. Steve Colburn and I did get into the room together. He banged something off the back of my neck back here, uh, my elbow here, my right knee on the inside, and the bottom of my left foot. And once he located those, he said, "I want to check you out even further." So he turned off the light, and I'm like, "What is this guy doing?" How do you look at somebody, in the dark? And he turned on a black light, and he was lifting up my shirt and just looking at my skin. What it looked like was fingers, like a greenish blue residue left over, like fingers holding my wrists and three long fingers and a thumb on my chest as if something was holding me down. And he explained to me that this residue is left over usually about up to 30 days after having an experience. So, when you have strange, unexplained marks and stuff like that, run a black light over it, and you can see that there's some sort of residue left behind. As far as I know, there hasn't been a clear enough sample for us to figure out exactly what this residue is, but there's just not a lot of money to do that. When it comes to having my friends sneak around at MIT to, you know, look, go under a do these things, he can't just do that in front of his colleagues. He's got to wait until the lights are off, the janitors are all cleaning out the trash cans, and that's when he can sneak around and kind of, look at certain things. I mean, that's how pathetic it is right now. I mean, Dr. Nolan, obviously, he's getting some funding for what he's doing. My guys at Harvard, they're doing it out of sheer curiosity, and they're being fed the information from Dr. Nolan, and they're also conducting experiments and peer reviewing with Dr. Gary Nolan. So they're opening up a channel through various different ways, and it's spreading. There's a lot of PhDs that want to be in the loop and learn. What's coming out of these studies, what are the commonalities, and it's not just neuroscience, we're talking about psychology, sociology, everything. So once that gets paid for eventually, because scientists are capitalists, they have to work in the area that pays their bills, but these guys are mostly doing work for free.
right, and that's also the thing, is even if you can get access to the equipment, even if you can get access to the equipment, then you get positive results. It's hard to release because then people say, "Oh, what about using the equipment?" What did your kids say that the entities looked like? Did they see the entities, or do they? How does the memory of being on the ship? What does that look like for them? Did they see any aliens, any entities?
Yeah, the typical I wouldn't say all the way typical, but very similar, what you would see with a gray. Um, my daughter had said that I was on a table. I was kind of out of it, like half asleep or drugged or whatever you want to call it, but out of it, not aware I was in the room. And this being walked her down the hallway, walked her into a room, and she was okay with it. She wasn't scared. She was curious. Kids freak me out when it comes to this stuff. Like, no wonder I was sedated. I would have been freaking out, but kids are open to the world and new realities. They're just fine with it. But us adults, we can't accept that. Um, Walked her into this room, and there was a machine, and she stepped up on a little platform, and when it turned on, her consciousness dissipated, you know everywhere. And she described it as I would in a deep transcendental meditation of, just being one with everything type of feeling. You just disperse and have all the knowledge you could possibly want at that single moment. Now when you come out of it, it's gone. And so she described that to me. But my son and my daughter both have very little memory. That's basically what came out. My son, he's my biological son, and he still has experiences, but he just remembers being, in a room, like a waiting room, but like a hospital setting with metal tables, with me laying on one of them, and him sitting on like a rounded bench that kind of molded into the wall, and waiting for his sister to come back, like they were at the dentist office, type of thing. And it's amazing how kids just okay, that happened. Me, I want to pull my hair out and scream, but thankfully it's okay. But my son, he's 22, he's in the military, and he's doing great, and he still does have these crafts show up from time to time.
Mm. And he's in the military. Does he share any of his experiences, with his fellow military men? Because
Not yet.
that's a pretty
Not
intense,
yet.
like, experience,
Yeah.
and the validity of being able to have a family who all experiences it, because these are the people you love the most. These are people you're the closest the most to. When they're lying, like, that's your reality. A- And so it's and they just everybody's doing such good things. What was interesting, and I just wanted to let you know this, is I had somebody on my show about 2 months ago who also described being hit by a beam, by a UFO, and becoming a musical savant. So I thought that was interesting. That's also something that I've heard
Mhm.
quite frequently. Um, because so they've so it's and so are these experiences still happening to you, or does it appear that they've stopped for you?
Uh, these things come around. I mean, it doesn't matter where I move to. Gosh, um, I can tell you the story about Jeremy McKim last year, and I say his name, but I mean you can look him up on Facebook. But please don't anybody bother his family or anything. You can see that he's valid. He's a real person. It's not a made up story. But in 2013, he was at the hotel here across the street. His dad ran the place, so they got the sixth floor penthouse type of thing with the trellis in the back. In 2013, I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was. He would go on the back trellis, look to his left, and see these UFOs darting down, coming back out, shooting all over the place, and he would film them. He had no idea that that was Milk Lane, and that was the activity that was happening with me in the very beginning. 2014, when I left to Maine, he stopped filming. They were gone. And September 1st, 2014 was my first night in Maine, where I was on the back third story porch, um, visiting with my new neighbors. And here comes a craft through the park, up over the trees, dipped back down and hovered right in front of this deck. So my neighbors are kicking over chairs and pushing each other, trying to get back inside the building because I had no idea what the hell that thing was. And a couple of them actually moved immediately, because they were so scared. But um, me and the kids, we didn't have any reaction except me. I had a guttural response that I just moved 2,000 miles to start my life over. It was going to be simple again. Everything was going to be fine. And the first night I was there, I, damn it, So fast forward to last year, I think. God, I can't keep track of years lately. I'm just getting to that age. But basically, I moved back home. I rented a place on the other side of these condos, right? And now Jeremy, years later, he's out on the back trellis, and now these objects are flying off to his right. He's like, "Oh my God, the aliens are back!" So he's filming them and excited. He quit hanging out with his friends at nighttime because he wants to stay home and watch these things. And he reported it to a lady that used to be in MUFON here in Arkansas. She gets off the phone. She knew who to call. She called me on the phone. She said, "Eric, are you back home?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Give me your coordinates." So I gave her my coordinates. She called me back and said, "There's a guy across the street and he's filming activity over your home almost nightly." So she said, "This guy Jeremy wants to meet you." So we met up, we had coffee, became good friends. I met his dad, Rick, and he was just so fascinated. He was like, "What do these things do to you at night?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm asleep." And he's got up to 7 objects that he sent me through his phone of them crossing over the water, hovering over my house. And he was such a dork. But there was one day I was at work and he had a daytime sighting and it's going over the water. And here's a Black Hawk helicopter that went right in front of his trellis and it was unmarked. He started feeling a vibration in his brain. He went to the bathroom, threw up twice, and then he texted me. He said, "Eric, I think the aliens had made me sick." And that was the last I heard from Jeremy. He went to his bedroom, laid down on the bed. His dad got a cold washcloth and you know put it on his forehead to help cool him off. Jeremy's arms stretched out, his eyes rolled back into his head, and he passed away. 35 years old, healthy young man. The coroner report showed that his blood pressure had spiked so high that it cut off the oxygen to his brain, and that's how he passed away. So we're left with 3 scenarios here. Did a UFO actually kill a person? That's not known to happen unless it's some sort of a freak accident. 2, was it a helicopter and these technologies that we absolutely do have? Or 3, he might have had a health condition that nobody knew about and didn't show any symptoms and abruptly immediately died. So that's up for anyone to debate. But is there still activity going on? Yes, yes. I mean, I'm not like Chris Bledsoe. I'm not going to go outside and look at the sky at night. I'm locking the door and I'm staying right here until morning. I do go outside after dark, but briefly. But recently, I it's kind of embarrassing. I went out to have some drinks with a friend, and bartender loves me. She knows who I am, and she's like, "I watch everything you do." So she pours like drinks for me and my friends, and we had too much. My friend shouldn't have been driving. He pulled into his driveway. He said, "Eric, I can't take you home. We've had too much to drink." So I said, "I'll just walk." Um, and I had way too much to drink to even walk. Um, Embarrassing but funny story. I felt this thing behind me walking down this dark road. I turn around. I'm drunk, and here's this craft right over the tree behind me, and I'm yelling at it. "You ruined my life. I can't believe you did this to me." I'm yelling at a UFO, drunk at this point. Uh, can't make this kind of stuff up. But as I'm done cursing this thing out, I turn my back to it and I take about 3 steps, and I heard a lady scream, "Did that just effing happen?" And I turned to the house across the street, and there's a husband and a wife drinking Bud Lights on the front porch. So you can imagine from their point of view, here's some drunk guy walking down the road, turns around, yells at a UFO behind him as if they're angry with each other, and then I turn around and start walking away from the thing. But yeah, they. I bet you that's a story they're going to tell for the rest of their lives around the campfire. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure, and that's kind of part of it is people this topic is just it's not talked about. And so the important stories that need to be reached to the surface never make it because it's just so disregarded. And that's why I just really commend you for just coming forward and talking about this and really helping out. I'm just so glad that you found Twitter, because it sounds like Twitter has been a helpful force for you to kind of come forward and maybe start talking about it. That's how I found you. How has Twitter helped you since you've been part of X and an experiencer and on all these spaces?
I don't think my investigator wanted me to have Twitter. I've had Facebook, and all that stuff, but Twitter is a different, type of thing. But yeah, you're gonna get really insane people everywhere. So of course you're gonna find that on there. But I've met some incredible people, and it was actually a good friend of mine that's helping me work on a book right now. That urged me to do something like that because there's a platform. Instead of bottling everything in, you can start answering questions, and the more questions you answer, uh, the better off you are. Because in the process of recovering um, traumatic events, especially when they're compiled, I've had like 11 years of nothing, this stuff going on. So what it does to the way your brain receives all this trauma is the timeline bounces all over the place. So with her helping me write my book the right way, because I'm a guy, us guys aren't as organized as we should be. So I probably would have done 6 chapters and missed out on 90% of everything and published the damn thing. But she's serious about it. And so me getting in X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, yeah, there's a bunch of goons, but there are also some amazing people that are willing to reach out, and it's great because I already work with experiencers, but here's some more, and they want to hear what I've been through. And every time there's a question that comes up, I'm able to kind of iron out that trauma and get that timeline, worked down and even into detail. But you talked about, proof. Here is a piece of metal I have. It won't be here at my place for long, so please don't break out the windows. Um, but I'll see if I can get it on the camera there. That is the gunmetal gray atomically aligned frog skin type of material that comes from uh, a crash that happened in, I believe, your neck of the woods. Gosh, I know people are trying to focus in on this, but it is very, very strange. Atomically aligned. It's got a lot of magnesium, pure magnesium in it, which really doesn't make any sense. But this, this, along with a lot more debris, came from a crash site. So when it comes to physical evidence, if a PhD wants to, put out a question to me, maybe hold it for a couple weeks or a month or so to look at it, as long as we can work out a contract to make sure this gets home, safe to me, so I can have other PhDs look at it. That'd be great. So if people say there's no physical proof, obviously you're not looking, because these implants are. And a little surprise I have for you is that I contacted because I was conversing with Dr. Roger Leir back then. He thought it would be important that I talk to the other patients so I can get comfortable. The surgery is easy. It's just a couple of stitches, sometimes one stitch, no problem. And it's a smart way, to clinically go about these things. And one of my favorites, I never met patient 17, but I met patient 9, Timothy Cullen, and I was doing uh, um, a lot of times when people go to do a television show, they want to hire a professional that's actually in that area, not television. But if you want to do a show about firefighters, you're going to want to hire a couple of real firefighters, right? Some good consultants that can show you what it's like. So um, I get contacted by television and stuff, and I like to work with a Japanese channel, but they wanted to do something on implants. Uh, they wanted me to do a removal on the one in my knee first. They sent me in for X-ray. They couldn't get a picture of my knee. It was not there. My whole knee and shin were gone. They couldn't. Picture after picture. Finally, um, the doctor was like, I can't get a picture of your leg. I can see the rest of your entire body, but there's a blank spot where your leg should be, and so we quickly changed that around to, can you find an implant that's already been removed along with the person it was taken from, and we can go do a spectrograph. I said, cool. So I was able to locate patient nine's implant, and no, the CIA did not take all of his research when he died. It's in the hands of friends and family now. I wish it wasn't in a basement somewhere, in someone's house. I wish it was out in the open. Maybe one day we can work that out. But I was able to negotiate. So we got patient nine's implant. Hasn't been seen in 22 years. And I got a hold of Tim. I said, Tim, you're not going to believe this. But I found your implant, and I also want you to be on a TV show. And he's getting on up in the years, uh, but you could see he was just so emotional about it. He was attacked by everybody for so many decades, and his proof, was on its way to him. And it just feels like the world doesn't care anymore. I mean, here is solid proof that's about to go down, and maybe 400 people heard about it, but anyway, it was great. I was able to get a hold of Dr. Stephen Colburn, uh, um, Dr. Roger Leir's assistant, and get the whole group together. And now my job was to find a lab. I need a lab that'll run a spectrograph on an unknown object. This was very hard to do. They want details. You can't just show up like you're at a popsicle stand and with $1 and get yourself a popsicle. There's a process in a spectrograph. So I was able to get a hold of a place. I know this is gonna sound bad, but experiencers will understand this. The lab was called Leir Labs in California. Like, you can't make this stuff up. So I was able to get them to agree. They were happy it was a TV show, so that could lend credence to their business and the work that they do. So it all worked out. Um, I was actually stuck here while it all went down. I wanted to go so bad, but I was stuck here dealing with certain, other people had some problems I had to deal with. So they all met in front of the lab. They filmed it, and the spectrograph came back, and these scientists were like, "Oh my God, this thing is atomically aligned," which we don't know how to stack atoms. If we knew how to stack atoms, the whole world would look completely different. Microtubules, the whole 9 yards, and these guys were scratching their head. They had no idea. 50 something metals, most of which are not even from this, you know, uh, our neck of the woods, as far as our solar system. Um, and some of these metals, you're not supposed to be able to combine them, but they were combined. It was just 1,000%, for patient nine, for Tim, you know. But if any of your listeners, because I'm terrible with computers, but it's called Duo Entertainment, DUO. It had to have aired by now. I know it's going to be in Japanese, but I know plenty of Japanese people that can maybe translate the language. But it was done in America, so I know the paperwork itself is going to have the spectrograph results and everything like that on there. But it was a really great thing for Tim to do that, and it's a part of ufological history that we need to go back to. And I did that. Shameless plug. I don't do a show like you do, but every once in a while I'll just jump on with a friend, Experiencers 1111, and just have a conversation. But I'll probably do something like once every 3 months. Don't wait around. It's not a popular channel. This is a good one here. But you'll be able to see Timothy Cullen himself, how old he is, how terrible he is with technology, and he's got his eye in the camera. But he's an awesome, awesome guy to have gone through everything he's went through.
Well, it's about to I think what you're experiencing right now is absolutely monumental, and I think this is just going to blow up. Like, I won't be surprised if this turns out to be a very, very, very popular interview on my channel once I release it, and for a lot of different reasons. and one being that you actually have the objects and you're willing to let people study them through contractual agreements, right? Like that's actually kind of huge. Some people will be like, oh,
I
I
don't.
don't want anybody looking at it. And that's not you. You're like, hey, I'm willing to, like, the object that you showed from Corona, you're willing to share and have agreements about the object in terms to study, which is huge. Um,
Well, to be clear, I don't have the 17 implants, but I do know where they are. So, but this actually belongs to me, um, and there's certain places and certain people you could talk to maybe go out and find pieces of your own, and maybe it's something, or maybe it's nothing, but you can. It's not cheap to have it analyzed, and that's the problem. There's just not enough money. Um, there's enough scientists now, but where's the grant? Where where is the billionaire people that are interested in holding up a piece of paper to the world and saying, we're not going to wait on the president. This is fact, you know? And gosh, I mean, I'm even seeing people in ufology go against real science. So I don't know exactly how that works in a particular brain, but I go with science every time because these guys are brilliant men, brilliant women that know how to figure out a problem, execute it, and figure out what we need to know. And um, if we could all work together and bring this all to the table, um, we need we need we need to do this. It's just difficult right now.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to
Yeah,
find.
and I think
It's
it's hard to
it's
find.
interesting because we like to think it's easy, right? Like this sounds like a job for you to try to get to try to find somebody who will take it out. You got it X-rayed. It wasn't popping up on the X-ray. It's like it seems like, and they're talking about trying to find a lab that you can explain why you want to do this. A lot of people say, well, why don't you just have it be? It's getting it studied is a lot harder than people assume.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, the science process, it's tough, but we've got scientists that are willing to do it though, and they've got credentials a mile long. It's just a matter of time before. I'm not going to hope federal government funding. I hope not. I hope it's private. That way, nobody sways popular opinion. You just throw out the facts, and this is what it is, and this is what it's not. But these implants are definitely physical proof. No, I do know Dr. Roger Leir did send one of these implants to the DoD, and the DoD was pissed. They wanted to know right now who made this piece of metal. They wanted to know, and Dr. Roger Leir is like, I can't help you. I don't know who's making these metals. These people claim that they're having abductions, and all of a sudden, here it is. It's in their body. So there were people in the DoD that was extremely upset that someone has the capability of making this technology, which is outside the capability of our own Department of Defense. That's a national security problem if I've ever seen one.
yeah, I would definitely say that sounds pretty clear indication that they don't want this information out there. Do you think if some scientist came out in our community who was like, hey, I can run with this, I can go with this, just somebody who seems, do you think you could entrust them to analyze your own implants? What would it, who are you looking for to help review your own implants? Beside, I know that you had this difficulty with other people, and like I said, it sounds like a job, right? Like, because when you do an X-ray and then like part of it's missing, well, now you got to go figure out, now you got to go get all start, now you're back at square one almost,
Yeah,
so
there's all there's all kinds of you can have. I mean, number one, finding the surgeon. It's exceedingly hard to find one surgeon that it could be a dentist, podiatrist, someone that can give you some stitches and do it the right way to remove these implants. You've got to have the thing to study. And number two is just as simple is be able to send it off to particular people that are willing to look at it. And three, this equipment is expensive. You can't just use the equipment, so it does cost a little money, and there's a waiting time where you've got to wait for your slot, your window. And once we're able to tackle all that, I think you'd be surprised how many implants actually show up in the mail. You know, I do know one particular person that retired. I don't know this person, but I know of them and a lot about them. But this person reportedly has removed over 300 throughout the last 30 to 40 years, and he's bored with them. And so that's amazing. He's only interested in the ones in the nasal cavity now that's closer to the experiencer brain. And the postulation is, um, are these implants somehow interfering or teaching or augmenting or doing something to the experiencer brain, or is it just a particular location? So I found that fascinating. But on top of that, if you're going to be a scientist and study things, don't squander the information. You need to tell the public. Squandering information in this has never been a good idea. They want to hold on to things for popularity or notoriety or something like that. It's just like free energy. You could put in a patent and maybe get, retire a billionaire. But if you gave it to the world, the entire world would be a better place. So, that does upset me when I see people squandering information in order to obtain notoriety, whether it be the public or, just colleagues at work. Either way, it's doesn't benefit the world if you hold it in your pocket.
So you were talking about this magnet, right? That you had like this super magnet that who was it? Who gave you the magnet? Just to clarify,
It was Dr. Roger Leir. He sent me
Dr.
one.
Roger Leir. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. He said,
And so that
"No, I
helped
don't know."
bring.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. I don't know if it's going to work with everyone. It's a thought experiment that he had. Instead of these, that this stuff is non-magnetic. You can hold it to a magnet. Nothing's going to happen. So he postulated that you can hold a magnet just outside of the skin, and it would create an eddy effect, an electromagnetic bubble around the object, and it would kind of move away from the nerve endings and stuff like that. There's a metallic frog skin type of substance that surrounds the implant. Okay, and this stuff is, the moment you remove them, you can try to cut them. I'm no implant expert, but I did know some of the best. Once you remove the implant, you cannot cut this frog skin with surgical steel. It won't even scratch. There's no way. Within minutes, it starts to peel off naturally, and it just crumbles like ashes. And there's very little left to even study what this stuff is made out of, but it stays in our blood, our fluid, all that stuff. It stays and thrives. The moment it's exposed to the outside elements, it starts to fall apart. Now, Dr. Roger Leir postulated that this exoskeleton, this frog skin, this smart metal, whatever it is telling the body that it belongs in the body. And nerves are wrapping around it and accepting that as part of the body. Foreign objects are always worked out. If you go to a doctor and say, I've got this foreign object, they'll say, well, if it's not bothering you right now, let's leave it alone and see if it'll naturally work itself out. And you prevent scarring and stitches and let the body naturally do these things. So a lot of these things aren't getting removed. Now, imagine this frog skin type of material with heart transplants, kidneys transplants. I mean, your body is not going to reject anything that you put in there. That would save lives. Like that would save lives right now. Incredible technology. So, for people to want to squander that, no, that's a bad idea. There's children that are dying right now that can benefit from that type of technology. So it really needs to be studied, not in the forefront of mind of entertainment, that UFOs are real. We know UFOs are real, but it's the technologies that come along with them that can make the world a better place, and not to be squandered by people that want to benefit from it. And here, that's the big problem.
Well, I think I do have people who have equipment that can analyze things. I think that can analyze metals. I think there's enough. What's the best word? There's a bunch of hobbyist scientists who I think you've probably seen on UFO Twitter and on Twitter in general, who do go and they like buy up this scientific equipment, like they own it personally, like it's their own private ownership of equipment. Have you ever thought about, like, cause of equipment costs? I'm just thinking broadly in terms of all the things that we can do to try to support you as a community, because people like you deserve all the support that we can give you, to help you answer this question, especially with all the roadblocks, that you've come across. What can the community do for you, Eric, to help you? What can we do for you? What kind of what if you could ask anybody not on UFO Twitter, forget UFO Twitter completely for 1 second because it's so wild. But like what's something that we could do for you to try to help, or society or people in your everyday life? Like, where do you need that support so that we can get these answers out, so that we can
Oh,
finally look at this stuff and make it happen?
oh gosh. Yeah. The best thing anybody can do for me is if you hear an experiencer speak, listen to them, give them comfort. You never know what they're going through. Of course, like me, I sound completely nuts, and so do they. But they're coping with something that um, people couldn't possibly understand. So show compassion, lend an ear, keep your opinions to yourself, and you're learning. You're learning from these people. It may not be easy to take, but don't fire back. Just listen. And when you listen to enough of us, you'll put the pieces together like I have. It's really easy. Scientifically, that's how you do it. If all these pieces fit, then it's a puzzle to be put together. And that's the most important thing. People are taking on ridicule. I'm taking ridicule. I'm backed by MUFON. I'm backed by ufology. I'm backed by PhDs. Just because I like to keep a private life and I don't want to be a Mr. Special Me and run around and sell people stuff, doesn't take the validity of who I am or all the other experiences out there that don't have a case, that have not been backed. But it's true. I've been on the phone with these people and they don't want to be the superstar. Let's get popular. The idea of that is kind of ridiculous. If you do have so many people love you and not know you, it's an empty world. And that's why rock stars sit and take pills and drink themselves to sleep every night. You got a million people that love you and nobody sees you as a human being. Once you become a commodity, your life becomes hell, you know? Um, so yeah, when these people are in a private place and they're able to talk to you, listen to them. That's the best thing you can do for me, because that's the work I do every day. I don't want one person to go through what I went through alone. I don't want to see suicides happen. They happen all the time, and so that's the best thing you could do. General, be a decent person, lend an ear, and know that all of us are learning from every single person we meet. So don't discard the people that know a hell of a lot more than you think. That's important. But if there is, I don't want to get anybody excited right now, but I am talking to um, a professional who has a friend that wants to talk to me about removing these things. Now, that's not to say he's going to be able to do it, but he wants to talk to me about it, and he's thoroughly interested. He knows, all this stuff is real, and it's going to be hard for him to hold his practice with the reputation of removing alien implants. He's gonna lose his practice. He's gonna lose his people are gonna stop coming in, and so that's gonna have to be a full time thing for him. That's a lot for him to think about. I mean, think about that. You're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You have a passion because you know this stuff, but he's going to take the leap over. So where's his compensation? He's not going to get any compensation from it, and I'm not asking people for money. I make my own money. I don't make money in ufology. I do my own thing. But, what's going to compensate him? So that those are the problems that you get. But if I can get this guy on board, even in secret, just so we could obtain these objects, The next step that we would need is just the people with the proper equipment, with the right credentials, to look at these things and report it to the world. And that's another thing. Where is the platform to expose the information? Should it be a website? Should it be a television show? But I mean, these things can be done. It's just not as easy as one might initially think, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes total sense to me, and I think having the idea as to how you release specific information is incredibly important. Like, I think how they set up Grush on July 26th was perfect. I think that they did a great job making sure it was released at the right time and the right place, and also the limited appearances he's made because he was on Joe Rogan, Ross Coulthart. He really hasn't talked to that many people, because in regards to it, the first thing people are going to ask, well, did Avi Loeb look at it? Did Gary Nolan look at it? Right? They're going to go through the list of people and just having the results, going to the experts. All you got to do is DM Gary Nolan, check this out. Right. And he'll be like, whoa. All you got to do is send it to a bunch
Yeah.
of people who are right on the top, like James Fox, and be like, check it out. And he's like, holy camole. Right. And once you get that, just having names to back it, to just send a little tweet, be like, no, man, this is cool. Right. Like that's when it all starts. Is all you need is that all the and it, but you bring up the best point, which is people really undermine the ridicule in this field. They're like, oh yeah, people just think it's silly. Oh yeah, if it was real, it would just be everywhere. No, the ridicule is such a holdback on this information that a doctor has to risk his whole reputation on it to go help someone like yourself in this very real situation get these implants out, and he's going to study them, and that's going to be the end of his practice. Like, he has to be moving into a different direction professionally if he decides to do this. And hopefully times change and it doesn't necessarily have to be like that, but the people, like, people's reputations are on the line, and people do knock other human beings when they're trying to study something. It's just fascinating to me that what really appears to be one of the biggest blocks that you have is people not accepting of this idea. Because if everybody was super accepting of this idea and nobody ridiculed anybody over it, you'd have the surgeons there, you'd have all the people there who and I'm just thoroughly impressed with your hoorah to go get it studied, because so many people. I mean, I'm just so excited. I am going to be looking up this duo entertainment in Japanese, and also where. What do you think? What do you think we're going to do with the Roger Leir implants? What do you think? Do you think if, like, the National Historical UFO Record Center, ran by David Marler, reached out for the collection, do you think they'd be willing to give them the collection? That's one of the most serious UFO collections I know of right now. Because they have to entrust it with somebody that they can trust,
Yeah,
right?
that would be
these
a
to be
good.
studied. And I don't know. I run into Marler
Mhm.
sometimes
Yeah,
here in Albuquerque
there's got
because
to be
he's here.
waivers signed.
Because he put
Yeah,
Christopher
yeah, there would
Mellon
have
put
to
a
be
couple of
contracts
million.
and waivers signed and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's all. Like, because I just really hope that one day that all this can be consolidated into one area, where the newer generations can come, like your children and my children, and they can all go and they can look in a giant library at these things and see them for the anomalies that they are, and what could really be going on. All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for all of your time
I agree.
today. I truly appreciate it. Is there anything else you would like to let the audience know before we head out? I'm going to have all of the links of all of your information after we're done pre-recording. I'm going to put them all down in below. But what else would you like the viewers to know?
Oh my gosh, nothing off the top of my head. I guess if we start going many other directions, it's it's a lot. It's a lot. 11 years ago, my life went from simple redneck, and that's not a bad word. We like the word redneck, to hopping on planes and jumping in cars and trying to chase down what happened to me, what's still happening to me, why, you know. It's always supposed to be the other person, and especially not somebody like myself that didn't believe in the subject. But it's been a lot for me compiled in a short period of time. But my major what I want the most is get disclosure out to alleviate the social stigma on innocent people all over the world. And for me, that's kind of I didn't get to pick my life's mission, but there it is, And I thoroughly believe disclosure is already happened in some senses. It's on its way in other senses, and it's going to come from so many different directions. It's ridiculous. Hollywood disclosure movement starting. There are medical coalitions starting to try to look at experiencers with no funding, but they're still trying. You've got PhDs all over the world that that are pining to just get a grain of rice of information. They are excited. If you're a true scientist and you hear this subject, you get excited. And so that's starting to change within the scientific community in a huge way. And I know people don't see that because it's not on our televisions, but I'm here to tell you, it's happening. But there's so many facets. We're having anywhere from 60 to 80 whistleblowers going through DOPSR right now. They got to meet with the attorney general uh, to finalize the process. June the 20th is supposed to be the new revision of the Whistleblower Protection Act. So that's going to make them feel more comfortable and maybe more people to come forward. So I think in the zeitgeist of ufology, these whistleblowers are going to be a thing for a while. But disclosure, the way I see it, is happening to 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50 people a day. In secret, they come across the news. They're not going to tell their wife. They're not going to tell their husband, and they're going to secretly research this stuff and watch, the process go until the stigma's gone. So there's enough information out there. I mean, 10 years ago, if you saw a YouTube channel uh, talking about UFOs and they have 60 views, right? Now you can go back and look at, these channels that are just starting out and you're seeing 6,000, almost overnight. It's just incredible how many people, and that's a way you can see that these numbers are just climbing, but there are people waking up every day. So by the time we get our expected podium dance with some kind of POTUS, we already have millions of people going, yeah, we know, whatever, let's move on to the next thing. So disclosure is well on its way, and it's something that's going to really change the consciousness of the world a little bit more out of greed and more about who are we and why are we here, And I think with that thought process, we're not going to worry about naked and afraid or Coca-Cola as much as we do right now.
Oh, and I'm just so thankful. Thank you so much for giving your light to the community, because it's going to your voice is going to come out of a darkness to those who are struggling and those who need to hear this. And in my research, getting to know people, meeting people, going through my little UFO journey, it's the experiencers who move the movement. Like, they're pushing the movement. And because you have the researchers, you have people who maybe like they haven't been abducted like me. I don't believe I've been abducted. Maybe I have. I don't know. I haven't discovered that yet. But the experiencers like you, having the courage to come forward to talk about it, this is what's bringing disclosure. And like you just said, everyone's going to be like, we already know.